Okay, and we're recording. Thanks for joining us. You've got me, Crispy, and Big Bad here, and we're going to be talking about a concept that we just want to explore. This idea, we're calling it anchoring. You've called it something else. You in the past you were calling it slow burn.
Yeah, I used to call it slow burn, but I like the term anchoring it because it attaches you to the world that you're in. Makes more sense.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're going for. We want to go for this idea that good role play should also, in addition to you speaking as your character, you should be placing your character in the world so that we can find them in the world. Now, this is not simply as GPS coordinates. I'm at this longitude and latitude, this many minutes and seconds. No. It can be as simple as just describing your character reaching into their pocket and pulling something out. That still anchors the character in the world because there's some physicality. It's a physical description, a physicality to the description, not just talking all the time. That's one of the criticisms you and I have had, I'm sure, and others have, of theater of the mind type games where everyone's talking and they're always in character, but it just seems like we're just having endless conversations.
Yeah,
it's just dialogue,
talking,
and it doesn't move. We're stuck in a place. The classic is you're in the tavern for 3 hours just talking to one another. It's not really the kind of games that you and I like. We like games with movement, right? Action.
It's got to have action, man, or you're just sitting around not doing nothing. I can't watch a game, or I don't even want to play in a game where I'm in a tavern for 3 hours just talking.
No, I mean, nobody really wants to. And those that say that they love that kind of thing, I think they're maybe missing out. So the idea of anchoring is, like I was saying, just think about on your turn when you're saying what your character is saying. You also want to think about the body. What is your character doing? Where are they? And that's going to help your fellow players to know where everyone is. That's another common problem when we're in theater of the mind type. We're not using a battle map anymore. We're really moved away from the VTT experience. But how do I know where your character is? How does the game master know where anyone is? And if no one's anchoring, if no one's saying things like, I walk to the window and lean against the windowsill looking out, well, then you know immediately, okay, he's at the window. Then something else happens. There's maybe something happens outside. The game master describes some loud noise or a bright flash of light. Where am I? I'm at the window. And yeah, do you see what I'm saying with this?
Yeah. The classic is like, okay, so let's say you're in this tavern we're just talking about. You walk in, you order your drinks. Are you yelling because you just walked in? Did you walk over to the barkeep and I take a seat and I swivel to the barkeep and throw my hand up? Hey, toss me a beer over here, buddy. Or are you just yelling? Bring me a beer.
I mean, either are fine. Just be precise with what it is, and that precision is going to help everyone else in the party be like, okay, yeah. Big Bad's come into and he's just yelling as he always does. It's the whole Cheers thing. Hey, Norm. Everyone yells Norm. It's Big Bad. He wants the regular, right? So that concept's really important because what we don't want to have happen is you don't want to get lost yourself, and you really don't want the game master to be lost either, because as the pace of the game picks up, positioning is going to become really important. Where are you? Maybe I'm trying to deliver some kind of healing or first aid or pull an ally out of danger. I have to know where I am and I have to know where they are. And since we don't have little miniatures to move around, or we're not using pogs or tokens on a VTT, you have to communicate that. And it doesn't have to be lengthy. Like, this is the thing. We're not trying to get into this situation where the role play just so slow because everything is described, but just enough,
a little bit,
just a little bit, and I think that little bit really helps. It also helps because it gives nonverbal. Well, in the world, when you speak, you're speaking as your character, so that's dialogue. But your character can be communicating things by their actions, not just their words.
Absolutely.
So for example, you could describe your guy. Well, here I'll give you an example.
Let's hear it.
suppose that I'm playing a sheriff in a Wild West setting,
Okay.
and a couple horsemen ride up into town. Dust behind the horses as they ride up, and as the sheriff, I'm leaning against the front covered porch of the sheriff's office, without saying anything to these riders. What do I communicate if I describe the sheriff's hand dropping to his revolver?
I like that.
You know,
that's all it takes.
That's all it takes, and that's what we're talking about. Just thinking about those little things, like, okay,
that tells the whole scene without even having,
exactly. Or if we switch the scene up a little bit, and maybe it's not something like threat of violence, it could just be something that makes the scene, makes your character feel more real. For example, same Wild West town. You go to the barber, you're going to get a shave and a haircut.
Yeah.
You describe the barber. If I'm role playing the barber, he takes the belt out, takes his straight razor, so flip, 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 flip. Just that is enough, hopefully, to say, well, there's some physicality to this. It's not just, okay, what's it going to be? Just a shave and a little haircut, or just trim the beard? What are we going to do? It's the idea of I'm describing the movement as well as what they're saying.
I like that a lot, actually. It adds, when you start adding these things, like, you can imagine the sounds going off and it being a real place, the smells, everything, honestly.
Exactly. I liked in our Fear City game, I've been rewatching it, looking for areas to improve, and I've found a ton of areas to improve. But one thing that I really liked that the players were doing is they were using this idea of anchoring right when they're in the restaurant, the jazz bar. Rick's character he grabs a handful of pistachios from the table and stuffs them in his pocket. And then later on in the game, he takes a pistachio out of his pocket and offers it to someone else. And it's just a little thing. I know that's super minor, but I like it a lot because it makes sense to me, and I can picture that. I can picture him, husking the pistachios and letting them drop on the ground.
I love that, man. And that's such a small thing to do.
It's a small thing, but it really helps. Or Phil was doing this too. The cigarettes, we were using cigarettes as props essentially, but with the idea that could indicate that there's a sudden change. People are going to be looking for something else. I like that a lot. I think it's really important. It's not just dialogue. Dialogue is great, and punchy dialogue is good. The other thing too that we're struggling with, but I think anchoring helps, is the duration of our turns. Okay. If we're thinking of one sentence of what I'm saying, one sentence anchoring or what I'm doing, then that can help propel turns a little faster instead of just constant back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, where it's just talking and talking and talking. I think that some of that is fine, but that can easily get into the dreaded 3 hours in the tavern, navel gazing, trying to come up with plans. Nothing wrong with the party getting together and trying to strategize or plan out ahead how they're going to accomplish their goal or get past the objective or the obstacle, but there should be some movement even there. So like you get up and say, well, that's a good idea, but I walk up to the blackboard and start sketching out, well, what about this? Then there's, I'm picturing it. You've seen the movie Ronin. It's an old movie. It was with De Niro, I believe, was in it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, and the guy that played in The Professional, Leon, The Professional. Anyway, there's a point where they're planning and they're trying to strategize how they're going to ambush. And there's a little bit of movement in there where another player gets ambushed by someone else as they're planning. Now, there's not a huge threat there, but there was some movement, not just dialogue. And I think that movement and anchoring in that world makes the world feel real, and it makes the characters feel like they actually inhabit the world.
That's a good point. And I have a question about anchoring. So let's say we're on a starship and we're orbiting a planet, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you're using skills, you wouldn't just want to be like, I want to run a diagnostics on the planet below. I want to take a seat at the computer console and swivel towards it and tap away at the keys.
Yeah.
And then the GM can actually say, make your roll. You don't just be like, I like the role for the diagnostics of this planet. It's like, that's lame,
I agree. I agree
right?
completely.
So you would
I
say
think
anchoring is also useful for skills, right?
it is. It's super useful for skills. Um, you know, I'm thinking back to this Fear City campaign or this one-shot adventure. We had a car there. Well, instead of just saying, I make a driving check to try to go there faster, or I do something, we had some practice sessions with this, and the driver of the car wanted to use the car as a weapon. So he's going to make a driving skill check. But I liked him describing first what he wanted to do,
Yeah, that's cool.
and then he rolls. And it was good because he's describing. I hit the accelerator, spin the back end out. I'm aiming for his back quarter panel. I'm gonna pit maneuver this guy.
That's awesome.
So he that's better than just I wanted to make my driving check to see if I can stop his car.
Yeah, that's lame. That's not even role playing at that point. You're just playing a game.
But your example is really good with the skills, because it's really tempting to have the skills be disembodied. Yeah. I don't actually embody the skill. It's just something I roll on. Now, I don't know. I don't have answers for everything. I'm not sure how you would use anchoring when it comes to something like a knowledge check. Like I would just make a lot of games have knowledge checks, or I can think of ways to
always
handle
say,
perception, but
you put your hand on your chin and you begin to think back to your past studies.
Yeah.
And then GM could be like, roll to see if you remember back when you were 10 in your arcane mystical magic class. I don't know.
Even if it's something like that, is something like you said, like, well, I just sit down in the chair and I just wonder, interesting.
Exactly.
Like that's the fact that you've mentioned that you're sitting somewhere. There's still that connection to the fictional world. Yep. We're not absent from it. And I think that's really
I think that's anchoring in a nutshell. I mean, you're placing yourself in the world. You're not a disembodied voice anymore.
Don't be the disembodied voice. It's try to think of ways. Now, you can understand how this can go to extremes, and I don't think that I'm arguing for an extreme.
No.
You don't necessarily have to describe every step that you take. That sounds like a 1980s pop song. You're not trying to describe every tiny thing. Just enough. Less is more. But make sure you're giving your game master. We should be giving our game master, whoever's running the game for us, we should be giving them enough information that they know where we are. Yeah. And we need to make sure that the other players know where we are. Then interactions. So here's another example of anchoring. My character, your character, were having a conversation. At some point, I describe, I pat you on the back, right? I put my arm around your shoulders and it's going to be all right. We're going to get those guys. Like just okay. So where am I? I'm close enough to you that I can put my arm around you and say, you know what? It's all right, buddy. We're going to get those guys. Whatever. Yeah. Or I pass you something. My character passes you something. That's an opportunity to again anchor both characters in this case. Yeah. In the world, so that the game master knows both of them are there. No question, when the bomb goes off, we know exactly where they are. They're in the air duct, both of them. They're got their hand around the grenade. I hate you, Gorman. And it blows up, and just as the aliens are coming towards us. But there's an anchoring there. It's not just disembodied voices, and it's certainly not. It's not hard to imagine the fictional world because we're placing ourselves in it.
True. I mean, that's like I said, that's all you're reading. If you anchor yourself, you attach yourself to the world, everything's just going to make more sense. And that's really what it is.
It is. It's about making it make more sense. It's helpful for again, it's not so much for an audience. Like we're not doing this for an audience. We're doing it to enjoy it ourselves, but we're going to get more enjoyment out of it if we can really envision. I will get more out of the game if by your description of what you're doing, your character's doing, I can imagine your character like you're imagining it. Exactly. It won't be perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be similar enough that I know you're posted up beside the door on the right-hand side, ready to go, right? While I get ready to kick the door in.
Absolutely. Another point is once you get to a certain level of role playing, you can't do things that don't make any sense because then you'll ruin someone else's. Yes. I don't want to say turn or something, but like when we were fighting in one of our Castles of Crusades games, everybody was all around me all of a sudden fighting the same guy, and I'm thinking in my head like, you all are actually hitting me right now if this was real life. So I remember I disengaged and just surveyed the field and had Rick, the game master, describe where everybody's at, just so I could know where everybody's at.
You bring up a really good point, because those of us that have run games, we get to this point at some point where it can happen if players and ourselves as game master we're not expressing with enough precision where everything is in the world, with these what we're calling anchoring statements, then the ambiguity of placement just it compounds and compounds and compounds until such point as everyone's lost, and then you have to do a hard stop and say, okay, I don't know where you guys are. Like, where are you?
I was actually lost in our Traveler game for a second.
It can happen, and it can happen regardless of, like, these are engaged players. They're not alt-tabbed away surfing the web. Like, they're not on their Instagram feed. They're paying attention, and yet they can still get lost if we're not adhering to these brief statements of where we are positionally, or what we're doing, what our character's doing in a physical state. And that will, of course, draw us all out. It pulls us all out, because now we have to go back to, okay, where are we? I don't know where. And I've been guilty of this. In the werewolf game I played with Phil,
I did that in Traveler game. I'm like, you want me to run down the hallway? Isn't the monster like literally right here?
There? So it's
sure, I'll run down there.
It becomes if we're not consistent with it, then I think that it becomes really hard to keep track. So the more consistency we can get, I think the better. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that's this idea of anchoring. Try it out. I would say everyone should try it out. We're going to keep working on it to get better at it and to make sure that it's not slowing things down. But at the same time, I think it really helps. It helps with this otherworldly immersion, this idea that, okay, this character, I have his voice now, but I also control where he is physically in the world. And my game master's good. He's not going to be moving me around. So I have to be the one that moves him around. And that includes gestures, what am I doing with my hands? If it's something that adds to what I want to convey. If it's not, then we're not going to worry about it. But if I want to convey that I'm getting frustrated, then I'm going to describe my guy pacing back and forth instead of just like, come on, let's get going. Like, I can say that, but I should add something physical to that.
I like that, because I got trapped in, my character was supposed to be frustrated, and it was just all dialogue, and it would have been a lot better if I just did what you said, pace back and forth, and
pace back and forth. I start looking around. I'm antsy.
Slam my hand to the door, like a mad.
On. Yeah, walk to the door. Come
like
on.
You should be able to anchoring. You should be able to express yourself through your movement and actions instead of dialogue.
Yeah, and not necessarily instead of, as an addition to. Like, okay. I would consider it as an additive. I don't want to remove dialogue, but at the same time, I don't think dialogue completely replaces describing what your character's actions are. I think that the two work hand in hand, and there should be a balance between the two.
Absolutely.
So that's all I got. But I think it's important enough that we should make this video and put it up there as our thoughts on keeping those characters anchored in the fictional world.
I like the concept. I think anchoring is the new slow burn. We're going to change the lexicon. It's called anchoring now.
We're going to go with anchoring. It's a slow burn, but it works.
Anchoring attaches you to the world that you're role playing in. There you go.
Exactly. You said it great. That's it for this video. But catch us on the next one. Remember to like, subscribe, leave your comments below. We love the engagement.
All the things.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for our channels. We got, of course, Big Bad RPG, myself, Crispy. I'm a table runner. We're putting up lots of games, and hopefully a steady but measurable improvement as we go.
Yes, sir.
All right, that's it.
Role play or die.